What's up, guys? Messenger of the Cross, Pulse Point Media. I just wanted to take you right off the bat to congress.gov, and I just wanted to see here in the overview, if you notice, it says DoD defines directed energy weapons as those using concentrated electromagnetic energy rather than kinetic energy, okay? Which is what warfare is used or was used this way. Kinetic energy weapons were designed and deployed and used our whole lives. But really, parallel to that, they've had the capacity and the funding and the money to develop different energy weapons, okay? And that's what we're talking about here, directed energy weapons to quote unquote incapacitate. What do you think they're doing to us? Incapacitating, damaging, disabling. What you mean, like the computer, the phone, the electric skateboard, everything else that has a motherboard or a circuit board in it, you can just fry and destroy. Just EMF, radiation, directed energy weapon platforms that have been used universally now by your local church, by your family members, by the local sheriff's office, by the threat fusion centers, as they, train the community on, how to keep things safe and save lives, which really means just torturing you to death. And so these directed energy weapons can incapacitate, damage, disable. They can stop your heart. They can do all kinds of stuff to your nervous system, to your brain at the synaptic level, and then disable and destroy enemy equipment, facilities, and or personal things and personal items. But this is, right from congress.gov, and this is what they admit to these silent weapon systems being able to do, first of all. And so when you get targets complaining about their computer being fried, they just got another one, then that one gets fried, then they get another one. And it's always timed right about when you're about to put out a good message, just exposing what they've been doing. And they don't want that, so they block you, stop you, get in your way, interrupt you in this war of attrition and this asymmetrical warfare. Really, that's what it is, using these energy weapons against civilians and citizens. And many people don't even know yet. I mean, they're just being tortured and they have no idea what's even happening to them. But directed energy weapons include high energy lasers and high powered microwave weapons, okay? And so, but when you go down here and you look at the United States, and it says that United States, China, Russia, they're all involved in this, in the use of directed energy weapons. This is what the International Disarmament Treaty was discussed, and at like the UN level or whatever with these criminals, and they just pass all these laws and pretend that they're doing something about it, while they also just hide the abuse under the guise of national security, because as long as it's a matter of national security, they can just claim we're here to keep you safe, and that's why we got to exterminate a mass number of the population. But the Department of Defense requested approximately 789.7 million for unclassified, okay, directed energy programs in 2025. And that's down from 962 million basically request, and a 1.1 billion appropriation in 2024. Department of Defense has not provided a top line for its budget requests, and then they go on and on. But we can just see that they list the different countries and the different, capabilities that these weapons have. And it's all done under profile policing and just to keep you safe. So I wanted to also talk about something that's really important, because we see the so-called experts, and we live in a society that's been trained to just trust the experts, believe the professionals, right? And that's why they do the Delphi technique, DELPHI technique. And it is a technique that can be abused especially, when people are running the process of this Delphi technique, which is a social engineering technique that's used after a crisis, after the crisis management, because it's a program of crisis after crisis. That's part of the deliberate management and gives the government the ability to come in and keep you safe and save lives and play the hero or else the victim when they get caught, but usually the hero and the savior. And there's supposed to be this consensus, uh, that's genuine and real for the direction that they manipulate us using the Hegelian dialectic. I mean, that is what they do. The very ones creating the problem poses the savior to the very problem they create. And they use the Delphi technique after every crisis. It doesn't matter what the crisis is. They just get on TV and glad hand each other and thank each other for how great of a job they're doing and how great they are. And then it turns into, this ego boasting confidence vampirism where they're stealing the confidence of the people to just trust the experts. Don't trust what your eyes and your ears hear and see, but, just trust the so-called experts to decide what's good for you and what's not good for you. And that's what really has been done with the trauma-based mind control, MK Ultra being used as well. And just on a mass scale where they scaled up the MK Ultra and just have one crisis after the next, and then get on the podium and play this Delphi technique against the American people and against, innocent citizens and people, especially that see. But it's designed to make people feel like their input is valuable or like their input matters, right? So, and let's just take a look at the breakdown of what I'm saying about this Delphi technique, and I'll break down a little bit further about how it's used and show some examples. But this is what they do. It's a form of brainwashing. It's a hardcore form of brainwashing, manufacturing the appearance of consensus. You understand? So when that happens, the quote unquote experts guiding the process can, of course, subtly steer the group towards outcomes that they already wanted. So let's take a listen to this video, a short breakdown on what is the Delphi method, because I think it's very important for people to understand that this is how they're being gamed. And we got to break the trust that we have. You know what I mean? It's like that trust on the quote unquote professionals and experts must realize that they're just liars and that's all that they are. And they have a prepackaged solution that they want to give you with the appearance of a consensus, an appearance of the majority of people going along with it when, they're the ones hijacking these board of directors, wherever they are, whether it's your HOA board or whether it's a mass tragedy event and the police get on the TV and start speaking on behalf of the incident and start telling us the narrative that they want us to, be a part of, make us feel like we're contributing to the change or whatever else that the crisis creates. The crisis is there just to drive you into the arms of the rulers, of those that control everything, that have the money, the time, the energy, the resources. And this is how they do it and get you to beg for your slavery. Literally. I mean, that's what they brag about how the people, the useless eaters, will just beg for their slavery and beg really to have the short end of the stick and be very glad and thankful and grateful to dear big brother. I mean, it's literally like George Orwell, 1984. You got to read that book. It's like war is peace, freedom is slavery. It's just this total inversion and warfare tactics that are being used on civilians. So this is one of them. And that's why I bring it up, because it's often used when targeted individuals try to get more people to become aware of what's going on in our society. And, they'll just have meetings just like I'm going to show you, whatever the crisis is. And, then they guide and steer the outcome, having a predetermined, prepackaged solution that they already are committed to no matter what. They just want you to feel, like your time, energy, and money and commitment is of any say and of any value at all. And it's not. It's not at all. They don't listen to the people at all. We have a breakaway government on all levels. Run under emergency rule, run under executive orders, run as a dictatorship, and really like a fascist country where the quote unquote experts in every field come together to call the shots over us. And I mean, after all, they're experts. I mean, you know what I mean? They can't be wrong ever, right? They can never be wrong ever. These people that practice this Delphi technique. But let's break it down. Let's look into this real quick.
Hi everyone, it's Yanis here, and in this video we will explore what is Delphi method. It's often hard to know what will happen in the future, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to predict it. If this is your first time on this channel, then make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to get updates on my latest videos about time management and productivity. Delphi method is a forecasting process framework based on the results of multiple rounds of questionnaires sent to the panel of experts.
Yeah, and those questions, you know, it's all made to like at the local community gathering where, you know, the mayor and the governors and everybody's there and you can go voice your opinion. Well, that's what I'm saying, how a waste of time it is, because they've got this Delphi technique in place where they make you feel like your voice is being heard. And that really is enough for people. Then people go away and forget about the issue, but they're not going to listen to you no matter what. And they are there and installed, you know, not elected, but installed by the big mega corporations to do this Delphi technique and basically siphon your energy off until you give in and give up to the prepackaged solution that they want to give. But let's keep going. And gosh, what dear experts. You know, we have so many experts. We saw that with the World Health Scare that was manufactured. You know, so we saw this, the quote unquote experts, and how powerful the Delphi method is. It's got you wearing 3 masks. You know what I mean? That's what the Delphi method is. It's a form of brainwashing that can literally, you know, Dr. Fauci can get up there and put on 1 mask, 2 masks, 3 masks, and it's very predictable. It's how ridiculous of counsel and advice will you accept? What level of lowness will you accept and acknowledge? And, you know, what kind of madness, you know, and that's just really to show how broke back most of America is, you know what I'm saying? Because they just get afraid and don't question anything because that's evil and you're a conspiracy theorist and you are crazy and mentally ill. If you ever have any questions about being manipulated through this process. But let's keep going.
The Delphi technique is a method used to estimate the likelihood and outcome of future events. So let's take a look at what are the steps that need to be taken in order to get the best future predictions. Step 1. Choose a facilitator. You may wish to take on this role yourself or find a neutral person within your business.
And the facilitators in this case that I'm speaking about are all, you know, your sheriff, your medical professional, you know, at the hospitals after like a big casualty event or something, and they get on TV, they get on the pulpit, and they are the quote unquote experts that can never be questioned, that never lie, that never tell us misinformation, right? But this is all designed to just get your trust. They're the professionals. They know better. Stop thinking, stop living, stop choosing, and just submit to us. Okay. And that's the bottom line. So the facilitators will always be those authority figures that are quote unquote professionals and experts in the field that they will parade before all of us after the very crisis that they create. The very people that are creating the problem in the first place are literally manipulating themselves into a position of providing a solution for a problem that would have never happened unless they created it or allowed it or pushed it to happen.
Step 2. Identify your experts. The Delphi technique relies on panel of experts. An expert is any individual with the relevant knowledge and experience on a particular topic. These might be people in your development team, your customers, or your friends with sufficient knowledge and understanding. Step 3. Define the problem. Here you have to clearly define the problem that you're trying to solve, as it plays an important role in the process. Step 4. Send questions. Once you have a group of experts and a clearly defined problem, you will send multiple rounds of questions to the experts.
And that's how they get us to think that, our voices are being heard. And it's really just they're creating a dead end road for you, leading you into that cul-de-sac and then just leading you to that dead end road. And, you think that you had something to do with coming to the solution that you weren't thinking about before, but it's always going to be more power. It's always going to be more control. It's always, we're here to keep you safe and save lives. That's how they make the excuse, that's what they're posing as, the hero and the savior, and that they just don't have enough money and resources and manpower and all the things they say to get more funding, to even exert more control. And it's just all about, we're here to keep you safe. We're Big Brother. We're here to keep you safe. We're here to save lives, as they impose total torture and are the ones causing the problems, causing the crises, in order to socially engineer society and give us these predetermined outcomes. Why does the outcome always have to be more power given to them, more laws passed that turn us into a police state, and more radicalization of the police against the citizens? Like, why does it have to always be the government getting more and more power and funding and money and control? And then you look back at all the years that they've been begging for, for our trust, on TV, on the pulpit, glad handing and thanking each other after a crisis they make. They shouldn't be glad handing each other. They should be ashamed of themselves and not even get on TV, because those are the very people that are participating in the crisis. The very ones that are doing that are the ones posing as the savior, playing both sides of the fence. They're the only ones that have the time, energy, money, and power. And yet those institutions that are so wealthy and big pretend that they're victims, and they just don't have enough to keep you safe. So you got to give up a little bit more control, a little bit more autonomy. Just give Big Brother just a little bit more. That's what they do in the Delphi technique.
Experts. Each round of questions will go deeper into the problem or potential solution, as your follow-up questions will be based on previous answers. Depending on how complex is the problem that experts are trying to solve, it might take 3 or even more rounds of questions.
And these rounds of questions, where they will select a certain number of questions and act like, the crowd is participating in the direction of the board of directors. And it's never the case. It's never the case. It's the illusion of participation, and our participation has literally no impact on outcomes, because those outcomes were prepackaged in a crisis management type way, in which they, cause the damage, cause the destruction and ruin, like the Phoenix. And that's literally the principle behind this for these Satanists and these people that do this kind of stuff. But they can't connect the dots. They have the duality and two polar opposites working together at the same time. And that's to dislodge you of your thinking. You're free, you're not free. Yes, no, mine, yours, back down, up, down, around and around. This is intermittent reinforcement. You got to look up that term, because that's what the abusers and manipulators are doing, to dislodge you from your own thinking and just trust the so-called experts. But the experts are bought and paid for. The experts are liars. The experts aren't really experts, even though they parade us with doctors and police chiefs and all these people that are bought and paid for, completely playing their script out, playing their role out in this big theater dance that is life. And, it's all highly controlled. It's all scripted, and it's a performance. And we're supposed to get to the point where we beg for the government to keep us safe. That's the whole point of the crisis management. And then the Delphi technique siphons off your energy for any real change, where you could be applying that energy someplace else, but you're running to the experts, the so-called experts, and venting your frustrations, which really, over a couple rounds, like 3 rounds of this game being played, you're just ready to walk away because you feel heard. But the board of directors is just sitting back, wearing you out. That's basically what they try to do, is just wear you out, make you go away. and waste your time and energy thinking that you actually contributed to something when the whole point is that uh, they in the end reveal that we have no impact on the outcomes after these crises that they keep allowing and that they keep creating, that they have the money, the motive, the time, the energy, and the desire, and are control freaks. That's like the main point, like that they're narcissists, psychopaths that run things. And this is the way their infantile brain works, that it's just much easier to create a crisis and damage and then provide a prepackaged solution, which is more control, more police state, more surveillance to the very problem that they create. All an illusion, not only of participation in the Delphi technique that they're using against you, but an illusion just in general with all the different crises that are supposed to make you afraid and make you cower and give you the chilling effect and make you run to the ones that know best for you. And that's the way daddy works. Okay. That's the bottom line.
Step 5. Act on your findings. Finally, you have to analyze the findings and put plans in place to deal with future risks and opportunities to your projects. Predicting the future is not an exact science, but Delphi Technique can help you to understand the likelihood of possible future events and what impact they may have on your projects.
And again, it's just about steering, you guys. It's just about steering. So I was looking a little bit at how police use the Delphi technique, as they get on and parade themselves on TV, pretending to be the hero, the savior, or the victim. And they've got everybody believing this fantasy world that, they're just there to do the job of a hero and the job of a savior. So, police and emergency response agencies often use a modified Delphi method system, probably more controlling, I would say more abusive and manipulative, and to systematically gather, synthesize, and reach expert consensus. So that just means going along with the quote unquote experts, so called, and really not listening to the common person. And it is a way to overthrow people's concerns and make them also feel like they've contributed something good, when that's not at all what is really going down when you strip the veil. And it's like, they get all these people on TV, the multiple agencies, disciplines, and jurisdictions are involved, and they're all the experts on the topic, and they're going to let us know, what the real deal is, because they're so smart and we're so stupid. We're like little children. That's the way they talk to us. And I'm going to show you an example of the way they treat us like, we're just little children that need to raise our hand still and ask to go to the bathroom. And literally, like, that's what they do to the general public and interacting with the general public's concerns and complaints. But it's just different methods and things that are involved: the police, the EMS, the fire, the hospital trauma teams, the public health officials, and invited experts like from different fields. They're going to be paraded before you on the TV, and just to let you know, that this is the way it is. And so, this Delphi really was a method that was neutral pretty much until they weaponized it, just like they weaponize everything, and then use it against us as a propaganda technique. But the technique is supposed to be like, meant to gather opinions from multiple experts, not controlled and dominated experts that are owned by the banking cartel. Just like use anonymous rounds of feedback and move toward a shared forecast or conclusion. And see, this is the trick that they play, the Jedi mind trick, is by having these meetings, it allows you to vent your complaints, and you feel like, you're following the proper channel of things. And there's our authority figures, there's the experts, and they're going to work together with you to solve the problem, when really they don't include you in that resolution at all. It's always going to be cutting into your rights and taking more away from you. And they'll tell you it's for the greater good. That's what they'll say to you. They'll say, this is a sacrifice that you need to make for the greater good. And then it convinces people to just, be victimized and be abused by these tactics of propaganda and control. But it's always about moving you who are in resistance to being dominated and controlled to a shared forecast or conclusion. There might be a crisis where the police have to get involved, and then they're going to get on TV and they're going to forecast to you, we need more power, we need more funding, we need more control, we need more this or that, we need you to give up more of your rights to keep you safe. And this is the game that they're playing. And all communist countries basically do this. I mean, anybody can go look at history and just realize, China, Russia, like any other country that's been communist has used this Delphi technique as a way to rule with the minority over the majority, and then lead the rest of the population with the conclusion that, we made the choice with them to set up these things for us that are nothing but torture and pain and damage and harm. And, that somehow gives them permission. It's like, we told you so. That's revelation of the method, or in just doing things in plain sight. But they are revealing the secret ways they operate and roll because they think we're dumbed down that much. That's what they brag about. That, all the chemicals in the water, the food, everything that they're doing to us across the board is having results. And that really is to dumb us down by putting fluoride in the water and literally just, blasting us every day with frequencies that cause cancer because the radiation levels are off the charts. Okay. None of this is good for us, but with the Delphi technique, they'll act like we contributed and participated in the direction that they're taking us by these crises, and that we somehow agreed together to come up with these solutions of giving up more power and control. But it can be misused. That's the whole point to what I'm saying. It's all about, reducing bias and group pressure and loud voices in an orderly way. And it, in its legitimate form, it's a structured forecasting tool, but not when it's weaponized. It can be misused like all the time. And we see this all the time. And we see the fake crises that they create, and then they use this Delphi technique on us. But this is where the abuse comes in, and this is the part that I'm pointing to. Really, a facilitator can control, or an expert, and those that pose as the professionals. That facilitator of the group, controls the quote unquote acceptable range of the answers. I mean, and if the person running the process filters or, reframes or discards certain responses, they can narrow the group's choices and really make some ideas seem fringe and make other ideas seem like a consensus, like everybody's in agreement with it, even if they're not. Okay. That's how they manipulate. But it creates the illusion that the group is naturally just converging and agreeing together. And there's so much harmony with being a slave and submitting to our slave master, Big Brother, and the Fortune 500 companies that have agreed together to make war against the innocent citizens of the world. It's not just America. So the experts are the ones that, they parade in front of us on TV to define the problem for us. But we never get the firsthand experience, do we? We never get the actual reality of the external world. We get a manufactured crisis, or a created or allowed crisis that is highly controlled, and just to inject themselves into our lives again and again. That's why they do it. They need the crisis to have the crisis management, to do the Hegelian dialectic and the Delphi technique against us again and again and again until we're ready to just throw up the white towel. And just let the experts decide. After all, they're just the experts and professionals. They would know what's better for us. I mean, that's literally the third grade level of thinking that they've got people down to. But, especially with all the chemicals and everything, and just all the medications that people are on and stuff, like the older they get, it's like no wonder the baby boomers are going crazy and so entitled and demanding and spoiled, and stomp their feet and shake their hand and roll their eyes and do all these behaviors all the time, when they don't get their way when they can't control you and control your life and control your happiness, which they set out to do, you know, it's the way these control freaks are. They all have this common denominator, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But the expert, define the problem in a way that really predetermines the solution. Do you see what I'm saying? So they go together, the crisis and the solution and the direction that they take us in. It's all scripted. The whole thing from A to Z. They have the motive because they're trying to rule and control over you. That's the bottom line. And they have the money, the time, the energy, and the interest to do that. And I'm talking about big daddy government that was really written in 1984, Big Brother. That's the name of the book by George Orwell. But, many people have read that book. You can listen to the audiobook online and just look at the parallels to our society and what he was talking about as a Freemason. All these people are part of this or that secret intelligence organization and cult. I mean, it's just the bottom line. Because, they think they're 007 and James Bond, keeping things safe and saving lives. That's what my perps think of themselves as heroes, as saviors. So it trickles down from the top to the bottom. But if, the same people who want a specific outcome also define together the problem, the questions, the criteria, the expert panels coming together, and have a part in that, then the outcome is already baked in. You see what I'm saying? It's like, when you participate in these fake choices they give you, and really they just give you right, left. It's up, down. It's black and white thinking. You see, they only want you to think in terms of black and white and yes and no, like a binary computer robot NPC. That's why they dumb us down and do it to all of us. But you understand where I'm coming from. I mean, this is a dynamic that I've described before, but the ones solving the problem are also the ones creating the problem. Repeated rounds wear people down, crisis, then the Delphi technique, then group meetings where voices are heard and, they give you like 2 minutes to talk. And next thing you know, like at your local city council meeting, and next thing you know, they might even be nice and try to make you feel heard, actually, and submitting documents and we'll take a look at that and all the things that they say when they really have they are a barrier or a layer that is laid between the public and the government to quell dissent and to make people have the chilling effect and beg for more control and beg for the saving saving of us from the problem that they manufacture in the first place. If they didn't create the crisis and the problem, then the solution of controlling us would not be there. You understand what I'm saying? So each round of this roundabout, round and round we go meetings where people get to vent their concerns, each round pressures participants to move forward and pass their grievances towards an agreement, towards a consensus. And over time, people stop resisting. People stop offering alternatives. People start conforming rather than resisting. You understand? This is why I'm sharing this today, but and assume that, the people that were raising the contradictions were just the outliers. They were just people that were the fringe and their voices don't need to be heard because they're crazy, but anybody that resists, I'm saying, this process. But this is why it feels like, the group is being ground down. It's like grinding the group down slowly is what I'm saying, that they do after the crisis and after they get everybody reacting to that crisis. And then the call comes to like participate in, government more and get more active. I hear people say as a solution, but none of that is understanding the depth of the problem and how deep it goes. And that you're basically running into the arms of the very ones that are creating the problem in the first place. And that crisis and problem wouldn't have ever happened if these people didn't have to manufacture predetermined outcomes that they wanted. You know what I mean? So they're giving themselves the excuse and the reason and playing both sides of the fence and hiding their hand as the abuser. And then just we're supposed to just look at the TV and be like, wow, these guys are my heroes and saviors. And man, they are here to keep me safe. Don't you know it? Don't you know the local sheriff's office is here to keep you safe? I mean, the Supreme Court ruled that that's not a police officer's job is to keep you safe. They even ruled that. It is to gather and generate revenue for the state. They're not there to keep you safe. Even the Supreme Court ruled that. So there's this illusion, guys, in this propaganda technique, this military warfare style propaganda technique that they're using on all of us on the TV. It's like the illusion of participation, whether it's a city council meeting that you go to, if you go to an HOA board meeting, and it's all kind of run pretty much the same way. And that's why, the crisis happens, the news comes out, broadcasts all this garbage and takes us down 100 different contradictory rabbit holes. He did do it, he didn't do it. Here's the proof, there's the proof for both sides, and so, but it's all designed just to numb you and get you to give up on yourself and trust the so-called quote unquote experts who are really criminals and aren't experts of anything else but experts at covert, malignant, sadistic narcissism and the tactics therein and the manipulation that they do. And without remorse, without sympathy, without empathy, it's just strictly for them. Probably, the bottom dollar is money. I mean, that's what a corporation is all about. No matter what, it's just the bottom line is always going to be the money. So, I mean, really, there's an illusion, guys, of participation. So I just don't participate in anything that has to do with the government or has to do with these mega corporations, because for the last 25 years, they've stalked me, harassed me, had groups of proxy armies hunting me and chasing me and undermining me and damaging my property and, poisoning me, breaking in my home, and it goes on and on. And it's a daily thing. It's a daily thing. It's always something. And it's always going to be crisis management is what I'm saying, that this type of governance has been seen before. It's nothing new. They're that lazy. They just supercharge it with an overlay of technology, but this is literally communism. When the citizens participate in policing each other and have this double standard where they get above the law status to do whatever they want to us and act as if they're, above the law, and even get protected and defended by the cops who then will do a wellness check on you. If you complain about, all these things happening in your neighborhood, you'll just be, have a couple officers show up at your house and asking, why the neighbors are saying that you're hearing lasers and you're being burnt in your house with microwaves and all these things. And, so they can check you out and take you away and drug you to death. That's what the whole goal is. And believe me, they use that probable cause where they get two of their people to agree that they saw you doing this or that they heard you say this. And next thing you know, your freedoms are being hijacked and taken. And they just chuckle and laugh and snicker and think it's all cute and funny and watch you as you're dragged away to the cop car, just all premeditated, all a way of policing and profile policing and dealing with threats that are so-called threats. Even though you don't have to break the law or do anything wrong, there's a future chance that you could break the law. So that's the way their hyper-vigilant stance is against citizens today. Okay? And it's all about, we're here to keep you safe and save lives, as they use abuse and are under mind control and are playing both sides of the fence. Yes, no, mine, yours, up, down, back, forth. As they abuse you, they yell, this isn't abuse, you're abusing me. That's what the cops do. When if you dare lift up your arm while they're, manhandling you and trying to throw your face into the concrete, at 12 o'clock at night, just knocking on your door, ripping you out, putting you on the sidewalk on your face in tie wraps. That's what I'm talking about. We're just here to keep things safe, okay? We're here to save lives. So go back in your house and stop watching the abuse that we're doing. That's what they tell the neighbors. And then next day they're over at the neighbor's house getting them to participate in the abuse against you. You know what I mean? Cross this guy's path 100 times a day. When he goes, you go. When he goes to his car, you go to his car. When he goes to the mailbox, you go to the mailbox. When he goes to the office, you go to the office. When he talks to a friend on the other side of the neighborhood, you got to be there crossing his path at the same time. And like literally hive mind, neural remote monitoring, hijacking of the human being, man. That's why I'm not the happiest all the time, just due to the fact that all social life has been restructured and re-engineered. It's not just that it's changed and that people are acting a little weird. They have the ability to take your worst enemies and copy that brainwave activity in your worst enemies. And then you meet somebody new, and next thing you know, they're acting the same way as your worst enemy on every single level. Like there's a hijacking and a spirit jumping from person to person following you. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what I'm talking about. Battling the brain waves of your enemies through your loved ones, through your family members, as they hijack and take control of your family members in this broadcast, in this projection, in this cloned version of whoever they want around the target, in a digital cloned way, broadcast on the brain and the nervous system of the people around the target to torture you and harm you all day long. And especially break that contact with the things that guy loves so that we can really feed on and get a lot of data to try to get him to react again and again and again, because we need to map him and we need to keep mapping him and basically and adjust the abuse as they go in live time. Okay, but so it's all these systems are in place, guys. It sounds like science fiction. I wish it was. I wish I wasn't having to tell the truth and do this and risk my life and keep telling the truth. I mean, I wish things were normal and there weren't people following and coming and going at the same time as me, no matter what time of the day I come and go. I mean, I would love that. I would love that, but it never goes away. It's been 25 years, no matter where I've moved, no matter what I've done. So it's the long game of wearing the target out and breaking the target with death by 1,000 cuts that eventually, once they finally exhaust all your resources and get you alone, then they put the pedal to the metal. But there is this illusion that I was talking about of participation after a crisis that I was talking about that happens all the time after a crisis. We see a crisis. The so-called experts are right away telling us and defining to us what that crisis is supposed to mean and what we're supposed to do, which is give up more power, give up more rights, give up more autonomy, and just trust the experts. So participants feel like, hey, man, I contributed. They heard me. I got to talk for 5 minutes, man. You know what I mean? I mean, about them stalking me and color sensitizing and directed speech and non-touch torture and street theater that's totally scripted to provoke and to cause wreckage and damage and ruin and violence. But don't worry about that. You know, my voice mattered at the city council meeting. And that's literally what they do to pacify babies, because they know they've dumbed people down to like 3 years old. And that's why they tell you, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Meanwhile, we're being tortured every single day. And of course, when the experts, quote unquote, come to a consensus, they lead you to believe that you participated in that when they had it planned in their papers way before the crisis even came and are ready to spring the crisis. And so they can play both sides of the fence and pose as the savior and get the control on both ends. Okay. This is why I say they own the whole bird. It's not the right wing. It's not the left wing. That's two sides, two elements of the same bird. Okay. And I'm just trying to be as simple as possible for people out there that don't really understand, that still believe voting exists, that still believes all these things, when we are a hijacked nation, bankrupt and declared insolvent in the congressional record, declared bankrupt. Anybody can go look it up. And because of that bankruptcy, the United States was restructured under emergency crisis management, crisis rule. That's why FEMA and Homeland Security and the national security industry has grown so much, because they are relevant in a crisis, in a constant crisis. And we are being let down slowly, like the frog in the pot, basic same principle, as they impose all this and transform our country before our eyes and still lead you to believe that, you have a constitution and bill of rights and all those things exist, when they become null and void under an emergency. Do you understand? It's right in the laws that as long as there is a declared emergency, your rights do not matter. We're here to keep you safe. We're here to save lives. And they just keep that mantra going, even though people are complaining, even though people rise up and are like, hey, I'm a targeted individual. I've been tortured every day. Like they're, damaging my property every day. They're, getting in my way, blocking me, stopping me, trying to put nails in my tire, like 100 times a week, like literally I'm over exaggerating, but that's what it's like. It's like, soon as you fix the problem, there they are creating the problem again and again and again. It's all about control, guys. And it's a military style tactic of brainwashing and control. So, but in reality, the structure of any crisis and meeting that's held by the very people that create the crisis is engineered so that the dissent is absorbed. Do you see? They are vampirizing us. Okay. Do you understand that? And then the alternatives are softened and the final answer matches the facilitator's goal. So this is why people feel like their input had an impact when it totally didn't. I don't mean to burst your bubble. It doesn't have an impact at all for you to go beg to the very people that are the wolves in sheep's clothing and beg them for relief from the very damage that they're creating to our society. And this can influence us big time. So, especially when used in public policy or corporate governance, right? Like the mass shooters, and then they get on TV and grandstand and beg for support and help and act like victims that need more money, more support, like they didn't get enough of our rights last round, last crisis. If you just give up your rights, then we're here to be daddy daycare. We're here to save you and keep you safe. I mean, I never asked to be kept safe. I never nominated the government in that role. The police, the EMF, the fire, the hospitals, the public health, the quote unquote so-called experts. I mean, anybody can go and look at what it takes to become a doctor today. You just have to follow the Rockefeller training that the medical system, all the books, everything is Rockefeller. That's who prints all the medical books for med students in the United States. At least I know in the United States. So all the materials you're getting, you are being fully absorbed, thinking you're so smart as you get out, and you're only able to be a pharmaceutical sales rep, really, when it comes down to it. When it comes down to it. So this can influence society when it's public policy, corporate governance, education, or community meetings, like I said, after a crisis. And I mean, we're open after the trauma to being fed on and to being desperate enough to give up rights, give up to the government, because they promised you they were going to save you and keep you safe. Do you see how grandiose and how psychopathic and delusional it is? And it's done on the individual level, whether it's the government or not, and it's done at the top of the top. Okay, that's what I'm trying to show here. But they will influence you to manufacture an agreed upon thing when there was no agreement at all. You understand what I'm saying? And they neutralize any dissent this way and create the appearance of a democratic input, of some sort of participation. And then they justify the decisions that were already made prior to you ever showing up at your local community meeting. You get what I'm saying? There's too much riding on, too much money to make, and they're not going to put anything in your control into the hands of the useless eaters that should eat bugs. I mean, that's what they say about us. So why would they give you the right to even voice your opinion? They don't care. That's why they throw you under the bus and have all these techniques and methods to defuse and take away that energy that could be used for real change and run into the ground through you venting your concerns to those supposed experts that are supposed to save the day. You see what I'm saying? How and why there is no change. So it's total mind control to justify decisions that are already made and use the people that way. And it's a process of control. And it's a very powerful process of control. So it's considered harmful by anybody that's awake. We consider it to be harmful, especially when it's abused all the time. I mean, it undermines genuine connection with others. I mean, people believe they've participated, but the outcome was always predetermined. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand today. I mean, it just erodes trust. I mean, when people realize the process all along was manipulated, they lose trust in institutions, experts, public forums, decision-making processes, you see, and that's strategic. That is by design. That is deliberate. And they have a way of doing it called the Delphi Technique. And that is what they always will do after a crisis. So you watch what I'm saying. The quote unquote experts telling us what reality is as a filter instead of us actually seeing the evidence of these things that they claim are going on. They just are the quote unquote professionals, quote unquote experts. And just because they wear a lab coat on TV, we're supposed to bow and worship them and never question them. That's what they demand. That's what this process is about. It creates this learned helplessness. It's a tactic to do that. And many militaries do this. But I mean, if every participatory process, leads to the same pre-chosen outcome, people eventually stop speaking up. And that's the whole point. That's what I'm trying to say. It is a gelding. It is a castrating. It is a carving you out, even as we are victims of these deceptions and crimes and crises that they manufacture or allow or create. Do you understand? And none of this would even be happening if they weren't also triggering the very events they say that they're saviors and heroes of. If they weren't just triggering the events, causing them and scripting them and having them played out in front of us on the media. So we just, are mystified and are like, yes, big daddy government, we will give you everything for the greater good. And, we worship you. You could never do wrong. You could never lie. You could never have fake experts up on the podium, glad handing and stroking each other's ego and telling each other how great they do when they don't even lift a finger. But it's so great, isn't it? So it rewards the wrong kind of expertise, guys, this whole process. Instead of rewarding transparency and rewarding accountability and open debate, it rewards narrative control, framing, selective filtering, and engineered consensus. And why it's tempting for institutions to misuse? Well, because they have a lot of money and power and time and energy, and they want to control the outcomes. And their outcomes, their solutions are so ridiculous and so narcissistically abusive and controlling that they need insanity and the form of many different violent acts and crises done. And we're supposed to all just be scared and beg for the government to save us and just be willing to go along with the misuse and the psychological warfare that these institutions and the threat fusion centers, the local community threat fusion centers are doing on the general public. Okay. And it gives them the appearance of public input, the legitimacy of expert consensus, right? That provides, when you get a bunch of experts, quote unquote, wearing lab coats, agreeing together that this is the problem, X, Y, and Z, it's all to just provide legitimacy to a narrative that is false to begin with. And the efficiency of predetermined outcomes is within this because it is an efficient way of siphoning off even more energy from the general public, not meeting the need or being supportive, but, giving the space to vent and to have this fake I'm being heard thing go on. And it's never the case. So the ability to neutralize opposition without confrontation is why they do the Delphi technique. It's really, guys, done in communist countries, and it's done historically, and it's done as a soft power tool, not a hard power tool. It's like a soft power tool, if I were to describe it. And the Delphi technique itself is not inherently bad in and of itself, but just like everything that these perps do, is they weaponize everything, even the electromagnetic spectrum. And they weaponize medicine, they weaponize the educational system, they weaponize what real money is, you know. They don't want you to know their control grid, their control system. They don't want you to wake up to the hive mind, the matrix that we are stuck in, the physical matrix that we can break free from at times. That's part of the reason why I feel I'm highly watched. I mean, you know, many of us have spiritual gifts and we are developing and growing, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. That's why we're getting so much attention when we're not trying to. But that's why I would say any process, guys, that controls the flow of information can be and will be abused. And that is my whole point to saying this. So when a facilitator is up there posing as the expert, defining the problems, selecting the experts, and is up there, you know, filtering the responses and shaping the rounds to come to this pre-packaged consensus each round to wear you down, then the outcome is not consensus, but it's choreography. It's them choreographing the results that they want. And that's what control freaks do, guys. That's what psychopaths and control freaks do. So the outcome is not ever real consensus of the majority. We don't agree with them legalizing the torture of American citizens, but they just do it. And then they just put us under the Patriot Act and under emergency executive orders and declare national emergencies and a national crisis so that they have the right to suspend our rights to keep us safe. You see, that's what they've been doing all along. And this is why people like me and people that are awake feel manipulated by it, because it is a high level of manipulation, of forcing your will on somebody, dragging you under a mess, putting that mess on you as if you have something to contribute to making it better, when that's not the case at all. They've already got their solution ready to go. And that's why they just give you a minute to talk in some of those groups. But this is the Delphi technique that I'm defining and describing. And I was noticing, here's the governor of Chicago, and, you know, these guys are doing it clearly. And I'm not going to play this video a lot, but these guys, we'll go back to this for a minute. But, you know, they'll have the governor talk and praise the head sheriff. And you know, he's just, you know, stroking the ego of the governor back at him. And, you know, they just get to really pretend like they're like us and pretend that they're grateful and thankful and that their job is so dangerous and we need more support and we're heroes, we're saviors. That's all we are. We're just heroes. We're just saviors. That's it. How dare you ever question us? We're the experts. We're the professionals. And like, so if you get anybody that like brings the truth, like, yes, these organizations are highly powerful and have a lot of money, time, resources, and they've got an agenda with where they're taking us. They have a goal. Yes, they do. And they are using the Delphi technique and fake crises to lead us down this path of Big Brother being daddy, looking over your shoulder at every single turn. Okay. And starting from the time, you know, you get your shots when you're a baby, you know, they don't even let you make it out of the hospital after you come out of your mother's womb. They're already, you know, dosing you up to damage your immune system so that, you know, you can be a cash cow for the medical system. That's literally are so greedy that they can't even wait till the child develops at all. You know, that's how we are dealing with such wickedness, guys. Like such pure evil and people that don't have a conscience, and they are able to act, they are able to perform, They are able to demonstrate themselves as the quote unquote experts. But I'm telling you right now, they're an expert at only taking your freedoms, taking your rights, and gaining more power and domination over you to tell you what to do to keep you safe. Is that what you want? Do you want to give up your right to exist, your right to have autonomy, to make your own choices, to associate with who you want to without coercion and pressure and damage and harm done to you? Do you want that? Or do you want to live in a communist country so you can play James Bond and pretend to be a hero and a savior and somebody so great that's saving the neighborhood and saving the day? Meanwhile, you do-gooders, you never even look into what you're even engaged in and why you're engaged in it. You just care only about the bling bling and, getting your temporary shallow reward like a new car. And really, they don't even give you guys that nice of cars. I mean, it's just, and of course, it's probably going to be a red and white car, especially if you're stalking me. But I just wanted to say that. But so let's watch this and listen to this guy for a minute.
Okay, thank you for watching my video on the Delphi technique. And what I've done with this video is I've put together 3 different videos, which were the best short videos that I could find that show you the Delphi technique in action so that you can recognize it. They also break down a little bit about what you can do about it, but I would really encourage you, after you watch these, if you're interested in finding out more about how to stop the Delphi technique or what to do to shut it down when it's being used, is to check out Rosa Koire and just look on YouTube and type in Rosa Koire or Agenda 21 and you'll find Rosa Koire.
And after every crisis, guys, this is what we see on the TV, right? We see the board of directors, the so-called experts, fake experts, actors playing out their role in a script in a bigger game. And they got all of us, the common folk, believing that our input matters to these corporate Borgs that are like anti-human. And every law they pass is pretty much anti-human. I mean, making it like a crime to breathe. You know what I mean? That's next. I mean, and that's what the CO2 taxes are all about. It's a Ponzi scheme at your expense only so that these vultures can feed themselves, and they're not here to keep you safe or save lives. I just want to remind you of that.
And she has some great videos about the Delphi technique, and she gives you lots of ideas of how to shut it down and what to do about it. Now, it's really important for everyone to know about this because this is used in so many different areas to push agendas whenever there's an outside organization that wants to accomplish something in your community or your region, and it's not necessarily what the people there would want.
And that's why I said, guys, who has the motive to create the crisis? If these boards are meeting together and planning an outcome, and they know the people will get in the way of that outcome, what do you think is happening? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure it out, man.
Then the Delphi technique is used in order to create the illusion that there is some kind of local input or local, local buy-in, that this is what the people in the area want. Everyone participated in this, these meetings, and this is the outcome. When in fact the outcome is simply predetermined, and you being there is just for show. Okay, and real quick, I'd like to just let you know my own experience with the Delphi technique, because I did participate in some meetings a few years ago where the Delphi technique was used, and at the time I did not know what that was. I didn't know what the Delphi technique was, although I did have a feeling that that there was something wrong at the meetings, that we were being asked to participate, but it really didn't seem, to make much difference, what one person in the meeting wanted, or if they wanted to add to the meeting. In the end, it didn't seem like it made a difference, and I just had a bad feeling about it. And it was.
And that's all by design, guys. That's what I'm trying to say, is that this is a systematic voice hijacking, soul hijacking expose that they run after their fake crisis. They drive you into their arms, the arms of the abuser. So we're basically, as a population, we're basically, as a population, like running into the arms of the very ones who are doing the abuse in the first place. You get that? And then they're just turning around using the Delphi technique, stripping away any of your consensus and agreement against this stuff in a very manipulative way that makes you feel like you're part of the change. You're part of the power structure. You're not part of the power structure. They are systematically making war in a declared way on the innocent citizens. It's really a transhumanist agenda, but they are making war on the citizens of the world worldwide in a fourth generational warfare weapons game where they use silent weapons for quiet wars, and they are waging war on us as citizens. Frog in the pot, death by 1,000 cuts, asymmetrical, a war of attrition, and a war over the resources and over your relationships, over your car or your home, where you live, over your job, and seek to destroy it all, to control you and to decide your fate and your associations for you. Don't you understand that that's what happens in communist countries? What do you think the brown shirts were doing? They were a proxy army. And it's just like Obama said, we need a civilian national security force just as strong, just as well funded. What do you think he's talking about? He's talking about an army of citizens being weaponized and trained in tactics by the government to be revolutionaries for the government, and the controlled element at which the government can abuse through a third party and then just get away with it. Because after all, they didn't create those groups. But the fact is that we see at the top, all these different groups are controlled by the FBI and the CIA and everything else. So, and that's who leads and organizes and knows how to put together these dragnet groups to invite people who are unstable, people that want to do something crazy. And that's, one of the reasons why they do it and develop all these supposed grassroots movements when there's nothing grassroots at all. And anything that gets organized and starts to get more big and controlled is infiltrated, like whether it's a church, it doesn't matter. Whatever group it is, it gets infiltrated because the level of control is insane. It's narcissistic, psychopathic. You do not have a right to exist or make any choices on your own. We're here to keep you safe. We're here to save lives as the justification for robbing you of a life and autonomy.
It wasn't until some months later that I had listened to an interview with Rosa Corey, where she touched on the Delphi technique, and she mentioned that she has some other videos that talk about it. She was actually talking about Agenda 21 in the interview, and she mentioned the Delphi technique, and so I did a little bit of research. And
yeah, I mean, after all, when you're killing people, people are going to resist, and people are going to complain against the torture and the abuse and the long death game that's being played against us. Like he was talking about Agenda 21 at Free NorCal is his channel, Delphi Technique in Action. But he's basically just breaking down, the same thing that I was breaking down. I was just trying to get some other coverage of this. But this is a tactic we deal with every day. This is a tactic of brainwashing, and on an individual level, or whether it's on a governmental level, and them doing this to us after the crisis they manage. Abusers will always pose as the savior. They will always pose as the savior to the very crisis they create, and then hide the fact that they created it. You did it. That's the best attempt to transfer that blame on us. Oh, you did it to yourself. And that's what they do with me, with the Perpin, the gang stalking me and damage to my property. And they just say, you're unstable. You did it to yourself, with no remorse, no guilt, no shame. And they just move on to the next abuse and crisis under this crisis management. So you can see it in my life. You can see it on a small level, and you can see it on a grand level at the tops of these power structures. But this is the way they roll, and it is dangerous mind control.
it immediately clicked that, yeah, this is exactly what happened in the meeting that that I participated in. And the meetings I participated in, they were a little bit different than the meetings you're going to see in these 3 videos. There's some variation on the technique used, and and I think there were reasons for that. And so I'll give you just a brief rundown of a description of what had happened to me in my own experience. Okay, the company that I work for is a contractor that contracts to another nonprofit agency that is an agency that is funded by the state of California. You see, the state of California is prohibited from performing certain functions by law. So what happens, at least in this area, is they set up nonprofits and they fund those nonprofits, and then those nonprofits carry out the functions that the state is not allowed to do.
And that's done in the corporate world as well, when they bet on a company collapsing with put options, and then everybody gets to make the money on Wall Street because they knew prior knowledge, and then they, will crash a company and destroy a company. And on the way down, they're making money. You see what I'm saying? So these people don't care if they win or lose. They own the whole game. You understand?
And then those nonprofits also contract with other private contractors.
NGOs he's talking about, and third-party contractors that carry out what the government can't by law do. So they don't stop doing it and say, well, let's just give up on this idea. They move around the law, hire a third party to go carry it out for them in a different name. And so they wrap themselves really like in the American flag, committing crimes in the name of America. And, that's just an example of what I'm talking about here and what they do often with these companies and these corporations, and how they never get in trouble. They just change their name, go bankrupt, put a bunch of put options on the stock market for that company to go belly up. They make their money on the way down. Then they go right into the next step with their new company by a new name, doing the same thing.
For-profit contractors to perform functions that they can't do. So what this means is that the nonprofit itself acts and functions like a government agency, state agency, although it's technically just a nonprofit. So what was going on at the time is
that's really how they hide the perping, the perp programs. You see what I'm saying? And really, Big Brother is reaching his hand in and influencing and paying and structuring the torture and the harassment campaigns against many of us. But all these NGOs, all these private contractors are involved, and it's an industry of torturing civilians.
The state of California was having budget problems. They were cutting back. There were going to be changes in the way that contractors were paid, and as well as some other changes administratively that we would have to make. And so what they did is they put together a series of meetings and asked contractors to participate. And they created the feeling, or basically acted as if we were all participating in the changes that were going to occur.
Remember, just the illusion of participation, no matter what it is, okay? Our participation has no impact on the outcomes that are predetermined, that they pre-script and pre-package for themselves. And then they just glad hand us and look at us and say, yeah, we accept what you're saying and your opinions about everything. We won't move forward, or we won't do this or that. And they act in deceit, like they're hearing the people, but they never hear the people. Posing as the savior has to stop. Pretending to be experts when you're no expert, and we're just supposed to believe what comes out of your mouth without checking and really seeing it for ourselves, really. I mean, 90% of the things that I've seen on TV don't match what I see in my normal everyday life. You know what I mean? I mean, they got us thinking all kinds of deception. I'm not going to even go there right now, but I mean, just with everything, it's only lies.
That we were having input in shaping how this was going to turn out. And we all had a vested interest in making sure that it turned out well, because this was our livelihood. So what we would do is we would have a meeting every, I believe it was every 2, maybe 3 months. And this went on for a year to a year and a half. Now, at these meetings, they would present certain items for discussion, certain agenda items, and we would go down the list and talk about each one.
Now, I mean, just think, you as a community member with other citizens, have complaints, have problems, but right off the bat, we're giving over, like little children, our right to decide what's going to be talked about. I mean, how many meetings have you gone to where it's already pre-packaged and the board, the so-called experts, get to decide what topics are even discussed? Okay, so that's what I'm saying. We got to stop being like little children and letting them infantilize us and use abuse to infantilize gameplay with us, because we are adults and we're no longer children, and we don't need to raise our hand and sit like we're sitting in a classroom still, and all this hyper brainwashing and propaganda and game that they play with the Delphi technique.
Now, as we went down the list, sometimes a contractor that was present would become upset or have objections to a certain thing that was on the list. And so what they would do is they would write down on a flip chart what our objections were, or what input we had on that subject. They also would pass out flyers, and we would fill out questions or answer questions, and
all done to legitimize and all done in congruence with, going to the doctor, for example. It's the quote unquote experts. They're going to hand you the material. They're going to decide what's going on or what you're going to talk about and what you're not going to talk about, because after all, they're the experts.
What they would do with those is that sometimes afterwards we would go through and discuss those things, and we would talk about our answers to the questions. Other times we just turned them in. Okay? But what they would do with the flip charts is at the end of every meeting, they would write down what we wanted to have on the agenda for next meeting. Okay? So this is a little bit different than what you'll see in some of the other videos of people using the Delphi technique. They'll very rarely write down on a flip chart agenda items that you want brought up at the next meeting. They'll usually tell you to write it down on a piece of paper and turn it in. Then they'll have the next meeting, and there will be no discussion of any objections that anybody had.
You're supposed to have like the resilience of a 3-year-old, like where you give up and have a temper tantrum and just go away and no longer have a concern, because you just got to let the experts decide everything for you after all. I mean, that's what they went to school for, right? I mean, you guys, this is just brainwashing that we act like this as people. You know what I mean? These quote unquote so-called experts, and letting them decide every little thing in our life. We live in a medical dictatorship. That's really what we live under. And it's a militarized medical tyranny is what we live under.
Okay, so this was being done a little bit differently. Okay, so when we would have the next meeting, we would come back, and the first thing we would do is go through the list of items that were put forth for discussion at the previous meeting. So we would go through those items. Some of them we would discuss in great detail. We would thoroughly go through them. Okay, then we would come to the next items that were always brought forth on the agenda by the people putting on the meeting. Okay, so then they would bring up their items for discussion. So then the same thing would happen. People would have objections or want to add something, and
it's again all about stopping you, disqualifying you, making you feel like you're contributing and like you're making a change when you're not, and just siphoning off your energy, vampirizing you, and running your concerns into the ground. As of course, in the end, the experts always have the right solution, right? And they're the ones that are going to lay down the groundwork and lay down the solution to the very problem that they have the money to create. Do you see which citizen here that's sitting here has the money to create these huge, entirely all-consuming crises, and then turn around and have this where they position themselves each and every time to be the hero, to be the savior, to have the solution, that very solution. Well, didn't you know, Bob? I got a solution for, too many people on the earth. You know what I mean? And they just keep moving forward with exterminating everybody. Slow kill, torture, death by 1,000 cuts, undermine the foundation of everything, so that nothing is supportive, and then just wear you out till you say, please save me, please.
And then those things at the end of the meeting would be written down to be discussed at the next meeting. Okay? Now, these meetings went on for such a long period of time that it was really common for a contractor to be at one meeting and not be able to make the next meeting, or to be at two meetings and maybe not the third or the fourth, because, like I said, this went on for over a year, about a year and a half.
It's all designed to wear you out along the way, along the process. That's the whole point. It's deliberate. It's intentional.
Okay, I was probably one of the only people that attended almost every meeting. I only missed one meeting, and there was almost a completely different group of people at each meeting. So what would happen is people would go to one meeting. Maybe one contractor would become really upset with things that they were discussing about changing. That person might get so upset that they didn't come back the next meeting. Or sometimes they did come back to the next meeting. They would again discuss their objections, which would, like I said, be thoroughly discussed. And then we would move on to the agenda items that they already had written down.
And as long as they give you the opportunity, the quote unquote experts and heroes, the ones sitting behind the desk up here, these leaders, these dear leaders, once they give you an opportunity to vent and tell your side and tell what you feel about, whatever crisis they create, they just sit there and pretend that, they're going to come in and mend it and solve it and fix it for you. And people just go away thinking, yeah, my voice has been heard. Otherwise, why would they listen to me? But this is all by design, and it's done deliberately. It's a form of propaganda and manipulation and hypnotism, really, to get people to give up on themselves, their community, give up on everything, because there's this learned helplessness when somebody creates a crisis and then poses as the savior and the hero. There was no need for a hero and a savior until they created the crisis and then positioned themselves that way to guide and to lead and to govern us. Okay. And we just want to point out this Delphi technique that's being used nonstop
for us to discuss at that meeting. Okay, so what was going on is they're making you think that you're having input because your objections are being written down, they're being discussed about, they're being talked about. Then the next meeting comes and you move on to the next agenda items. Now, because I attended all the meetings and the final meeting, I got to see everything as it progressed. And at the final meeting, I was left with the feeling that the outcome that they had at that meeting for all of us had nothing to do with any objection or anything that any contractor had brought up to be put on the agenda. I was left with the distinct feeling that it had been predetermined from the very beginning, that they could have just told us that at the beginning. We could have had one meeting where they say, these are the changes we have to implement. We're having budget problems, and I'm sorry, but we have no choice. We have to do these things. And, we would have had to deal with that. The reason I think they didn't do that is because the one thing that they're afraid of is everyone getting upset about something at the same time. Okay? When they tell you, this is what we're going to do, and they lay it all out, they're running the risk of everybody becoming angry, and when everyone's angry at the same time, they can get together and work together and make sure those things don't happen. Now, we as contractors had few options, but the one thing that could have happened if we all became upset enough is we could have worked together and forced a renegotiation of contracts.
And this is what it's all about. Like I said, misdirection with the energy in a very highly manipulative, crafted, social engineering and social hygiene type way. So I just wanted to share this, guys. You can go to free NorCal Delphi Technique in action. He breaks it down and goes through it. I don't know this guy, I don't know his channel. I just saw this video and I was like, exactly what I'm trying to say. So I just wanted to post that and let you guys know that we're battling this every day. And of course, this right here is, Chicago PD provide update after police officer killed, another injured in shooting at Northside Hospital. And this just is more examples of the Delphi technique. That's why I had this up. But there are many examples online where they get on the podium and you just listen and you hear the victimhood. You hear them posing as the hero, as the savior, as the one that can keep you safe. And we just need to do our jobs. The greater good is worth it. We can abuse you for the greater good. And these things just have to happen because, we always have needed a hyper controlling surveillance system over the masses. You know what I mean? So it's just all Delphi technique, all brainwashing, all evil. And there is no participation. It is just an illusion, guys. You're not the expert. And they just pose as the fake experts all the time. I mean, they can literally put a guy in a uniform who's an actor and put, a guy in a medical outfit, all white and, just parade them on TV. And we would people in America would just totally accept this, that the quote unquote expert, he must be telling the truth. And this narrative is how they lay a narrative and combine it with psychological warfare tactics to make that narrative fit and to get people to defend that which is false as they legitimize their existence and function. Do you understand? And they will use shootings. They will use whatever it takes to run the Delphi technique on you as a population and then disarm you so that you are literally a little child raising your hand and begging for Big Daddy government to come keep you safe and save you and save your life. You will beg to have your rights taken. That's what they say. I mean, they say that, we'll beg to have our rights taken away from us, which they already have been. But I'm just saying, people will beg for their slavery because of the way they do this. High level technological propaganda and manipulation. So I just wanted to share that, guys. And anybody can go see the Delphi technique and what that's all about and how they will always use police, EMS, fire, hospital trauma teams, and public health officials. And all these are invited as experts to give us a narrative right away over a fake crisis that the government creates only to pose as the savior, the one who can only solve it if you just give up all control and give up all your rights. Okay. So I just wanted to say that, guys, not that we have rights anymore, but I mean, I just make the choice to be a free human being inwardly. And no matter what they do outwardly, I'm going to keep being me and you guys keep being you. Keep up the good work. This is Messenger of the Cross, Pulse Point Media. Peace out.